Hi, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us again for an Autodesk EAGLE webinar. And today we'll be discussing all about what's new in EAGLE version 9.4. Have a nice list of brand new features that have been included in this version. Before we begin, we'd like to gauge the audience that is attending the class. That way we have an idea of how fast or the pace we're going to be using for the class. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our poll. If you could just take a minute and fill it out for us, that way we could have an idea. In the meantime, also, we always like to have an idea where you're from. So if you could just use the chat and let us know, where are you located? Are you here in the US? Are you in Latin America, in Europe, in Asia? And we already have somebody already checking in from Turkey, so greatly appreciate it. Pretty far away. And just to let you know, Jorge and myself, we're located in South Florida. We're approximately 20 minutes just north of Miami and approximately 15 minutes from the beach of Fort Lauderdale. So we're here in South Florida. So, and also this is the first time that we actually are streaming this webinar via live through YouTube. So for those of you that have never joined us on YouTube or prefer to be on YouTube, yeah, the link will be shared with you. And those that are participating on YouTube, I would like to thank you for joining us. This is our first time broadcasting live through YouTube, so we greatly appreciate it that you have taken the time to join us today. Those of you that are on the YouTube stream, if you don't mind letting us know on the chat, where are you located? We'd like to see that. So if you don't mind, just go ahead and let me know. Where are you guys located? So we have Ohio. So here in the US. Thank you for that, Mr. Keegan. Greatly appreciate it. According to our polls, we have that the majority of you are, it seems that we have a lot, the vast majority are tinkers or makers. The vast majority here. We do have some of you that are actually using, actually, it's kind of split evenly between those that are actually using Eagle for work or those that are using Eagle for personal projects. So it's quite split almost down the middle when it comes to that audience. Now, when it comes to the experience of Eagle, the majority of you have just recently started using Eagle, it appears. Okay, so we'll use that pace. That way we know. Okay, Jorge. So almost everybody that has joined us today have been using Eagle maybe within the past month or so. And then it's pretty split after that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and end the poll. So, on YouTube, we have our friends from Israel, we have Czech Republic, and from Chicago as well are joining us. Hey, thank you, greatly appreciate it, Lawrence. Thank you for being here. The other names I cannot pronounce, so I'm not going to even try to pronounce those. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin our webinar. Before we actually begin, I'm going to go ahead and just hit the record button. That way we can post this on our later on our YouTube channel. Well, thank you for those that actually took the time to participate in our poll questions today. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again on an Autodesk EAGLE webinar. We're quite excited about today's webinar because we're going to be talking about the features that were released on EAGLE 9.4, which was recently released approximately 2 weeks ago. And there's a lot to cover. But before we actually begin covering the new features, let's go ahead and do some basic introductions. Let's do some introductions. Okay. Okay. Well, my name is Edwin Robledo. Everybody just calls me Ed. I've been working with the support team for Eagle for approximately the last 20 years, and Jorge has been with us for the last 10 years. I run the support team for Eagle globally. Jorge Garcia, besides being our support leader, runs the forum, as well as he's working with many of the community projects that the Eagle support team has been involved with Autodesk as well. Now, we've come a long way in a very short time. We joined the Autodesk team in summer of 2016, and since then, many new features have been added. One of our team members actually created the snapshot. That way you could have somewhat of an idea of everything that has been implemented once we were acquired by Autodesk. I would dare to venture that I would dare to say we have over 75 brand new tools, features, or enhancements that have been added to Eagle. But today, we're going to only concentrate on what has been added to Eagle 9.4. I'm just going to highlight some of them before we actually go live with Eagle. First of all, in the past, when you wanted to actually take advantage of assets or components that are already in your design into your library, the only way we would be able to do this is by having a tool in which would copy all of the assets from a design into multiple libraries or into one library. On this new version, now we do have the capability of actually selecting a single asset and have that copied into my library. Now, library assets consist of three stages: the device, the symbol, and the footprint. You could actually select which particular element of the asset you want to copy into your library. This makes it easier if you have users actually sharing a design with you but did not provide you the library. That way you could reuse them on a different project. So you're able to now easily just copy these elements. In addition to this, our CAM processor has been expanded to include your bill of material when you actually create the files as well. You'll notice that there's an assembly section now down on the bottom, and this will actually generate a bill of material, and you could select the output type, either HTML, CSV, or text format as well. Now, bus routing. The way you execute manual routing has slightly been enhanced. So now when manual routing is invoked, you get many options. And one of them now is called routing multiple airwires. Other ones actually refer to it as bus routing. This gives you the capability of selecting multiple airwires to route them. And the capabilities of this are actually quite enhanced to include quick route as well. And we'll be going over that live when we go with Eagle. Differential pair routing has been enhanced in the fact that now you actually could see your differential pairs when you actually invoke them. In the past, when you had a differential pair lines or signals, it was actually quite difficult to find it if your design was quite congested. Now, once you select from the manual route menu the differential pair option, they will actually highlight. In addition to that, the quick route has also been added. That way you could end these lines easily instead of having to release one, route one, and then come back and route the second one, which was the option that we had previously. One of the most exciting capabilities that has been added is the fact that you can now add 3D models directly from the schematic or directly from the board. But there's a few options for this, and Jorge is actually going to be covering both options. But the fact that you could actually assign 3D models directly to the component from within the schematic on the board is a great enhancement, because not always you'll have the library, or maybe you're the mechanical engineer and not the ECAD engineer, and you just want to be able to do some mapping. That way, if you're working with Fusion 360, you could get a realistic view of the circuit board that has been handed over to you. And last but not least, we're actually talking today, Jorge and myself, about just doing a webinar on this topic by itself. Object inspector and selection filter. This is a really nice feature once you learn how to use it. What happens is that the selection filter allows you to pre-select, or actually lets you filter which items are going to be selected on the next group you're going to create. On this example that I have on the screen right now, in essence, what I wanted to only select the devices. As you can see, once I select them, those are the ones that are highlighted on the frame that you see on the right-hand side. But now I could highlight the inspector and I could apply changes to what I have selected. The changes are going to change depending on what items have actually been selected. In this instance, you'll see that at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, I got my quick actions, which are the options that are available for the selection that I have defined. Now, let's go ahead and go live with Eagle. That way we'll learn more of how to actually take advantage of these tools using Eagle. We'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of the webinar today. So please just refrain your questions to the end. For our friends on YouTube, we will go ahead and take care of those as well, okay? So we will be answering those questions as well. So Jorge, if you don't mind, go ahead and share your screen and show us a little bit more about Eagle and the new features added to Eagle 9.4.
Let me know if you guys can see it, if you can hear me. Can everyone hear me?
I hear you. Yes, I could hear you, and I do see your screen, George.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and start talking about the new features that we have. So in my case, I recently updated to 9.4.2, and you see that I have Design Manager, Inspector, and Selection Filter all kind of on top of each other. What you can do, and one thing that is new, is the ability to tab these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Design Manager over here. You kind of have to play with it a little bit to find the spot for it to grab. And then take the inspector. There we go. I want it there. Take the selection filter also. I like them over here. And there we are. You can obviously arrange them as you see fit. I like to have the inspector over here in the middle. Okay, so really it allows you to very quickly get back screen real estate and still be able to leverage the features that you're used to working with. So let's talk about first and foremost the object inspector and the selection filter. So these are two big new features to Eagle as far as workflow paradigms go. So the selection filter, as I was mentioning, lets you have complete control over what items are become part of a group. So for example, you'll notice that right now, everything is selected. So on all layers and all types of objects can be selected. So if I form a group, it doesn't matter where, I'm going to get everything that's in that group. And if you notice my highlighting is different than normal, I do have high contrast mode on. Okay, but now what if we're just interested in getting devices, for example, and we're only interested in devices that are on the top layer? So I can form that same group, I can cast that really wide net, and what you'll see is that only those components that are on the top are selected. Anything that's on the bottom does not get selected. See, all of these little capacitors and resistors over here and stuff like that, none of that got selected. So it makes it really easy to filter and make a very precise selection based on these parameters here. Now, if I hit reset, I get again the full selection, and the next group I form will again grab everything. And that's the gist of it. Now, another thing you'll notice is that you can actually have the filter be based on a layer preset. So for example, if I only want to select things that are on the top in general, I have preset top, and you'll see that only items on these layers can be selected. Same thing with bottom. Standard is our normal view, and you can hit all to select everything. Okay, so it's a very, very powerful setup. It gives you complete control over selecting whatever items you wish to work with. Now, how can we leverage this together with the inspector? So the inspector basically serves as the info command on steroids. So if I click on a single item, like let's say this component over here, you'll see that I'll get basically what would show up in the info command. The same properties, position, name, value, etc. Now, we have a few quick actions that we can perform on the group. As you can see here, we can define attributes for it, change its value, replace, we can do rotate, we can mirror. We can create attributes, new attributes as well. So far, you're basically seeing the info command with a few bit more functionality. We can confirm, again, we can make that very obvious by just clicking info, and you'll see it's the same information that you would get. Now, where do things get interesting? Well, the inspector doesn't limit itself to just a single item selection. What it will do is it will show you the common properties of all of the items that have been selected that form part of your group. So let's say, easy example, say device, okay? And I'm just going to form a group that contains all of these resistors over here, okay? Now, if I go to inspector, it lets you know what items are in the group, so you can double check, make sure you didn't get something you didn't want. You'll notice that you're given all the values of all these resistors, everything that's there, their positions. And you're going to notice under properties, it shows what they have in common. They all have the same X position because they're all in the same column. Now, what we can do is we can adjust these so all of the items are affected. Simple example. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that we want all of these resistors to have the same value. So you want them all to be 4.7K. 7K. As soon as I hit enter, you'll see that all of them now get the same value, 4.7K. You notice that there are properties that are common to these types of groups, to the items in this group, are available as quick actions. So we could replace all of these resistors with a different device, maybe change the size of all the resistors. That would be super useful. You can rotate them around the in place. So instead of rotating them as a big unit, you can rotate them in place around the origin. So you'll see it'll do that. Okay. So lots of power that's in this functionality. Now, one thing that makes it also very interesting, I'm just going to undo what I've done so far. Another thing that makes it really interesting is that it works with the design manager. So what you can do is you can go, for example, devices, and because the design manager can form a group, let's say we want all resistors to start with R1. Okay. So these are all the resistors that have a 1 near the beginning of their name. And if I select them all, notice how spread out that group is. Trying to form that under normal circumstances would be very difficult. Even with the selection filter enabled, it would be very difficult to form this group because all those resistors are spread out. But now we form the group, we go to inspector, and they're all here. And we can again adjust them as a group. So there's a lot of power just in this new functionality involving the selection filter and the inspector. And the fact that the inspector can also collaborate with the design manager makes the design manager that much more useful, because you can form these queries and form groups that under normal circumstances would be extremely difficult to form, just because of distance, just because of the density of the board. So there's a lot of power here. We definitely know that the more you use it, the more uses you will find for it. It's an extremely powerful set of functionality. So that's what we wanted to cover with the inspector and the selection filter. Just give you the overview of how the features work. Let's move on now to the changes that have been done to the CAM processor. So I'm going to click here on manufacturing, and you'll notice we can click CAM. When you do this, CAM save, I'm not going to save it. It'll be fine. You notice it opens up in the middle of the screen, and we're going to see that there's a couple of new features here that we want to highlight. First and foremost, all of the templates now have this new assembly section, and they allow you as the newest member of that section, and currently the only member of that section, is the bill of materials generation. As you can see, you can specify different parameters of how you want the bill of materials generated. I like CSV. And then you can just export the file or process a job, and you'll see that a bill of materials will be generated in addition to your normal Gerber and drill file. So you no longer have to generate the bill of materials as a separate process. It can all be run from within the CAM processor. Now the other new feature is the auto drill. Basically, the auto drill automatically picks up all the drills that are available in the design, and it will produce them as needed. So you don't have to worry about setting up any special drill configurations or things like that. It will pick up the appropriate drill configurations as needed. So that makes it really easy, and it also is more in line with how the old CAM processor worked, where if you just specified that you needed a drill file, EAGLE would handle producing all the necessary files. So those are the two big changes that came to the CAM processor. And obviously, if you haven't seen the CAM processor since version 7.7, there's a lot of new functionality here that you're going to want to check out. So that's what's new with the CAM processor, these new functionalities. To speed up your workflow, I'm going to go ahead and cancel here. Oh, sorry, I don't want to save discard. So the next thing we want to talk about is the changes to managed libraries, including what Ed was mentioning about being able to assign 3D models on the board. So first change, if we go to Library, open Library Manager. If you go to In Use, you'll see that now there's this option to delete all the pre-installed libraries. And that's useful if in your particular workflow you only ever work with your personal libraries and you don't want to deal with the libraries that are managed with EAGLE, that come with EAGLE. You can just click this button and they'll be removed. Now, if you do it by accident, you don't have to worry. In the Available tab is basically the undo button for that option. You can click on the installed bundled libraries and it'll add them in. So with these clicks, you have full control over what libraries you're seeing. You can obviously see all the ones that ship with EAGLE. You can limit yourself to just your own if that's what your workflow entails and how you like to work. And if you do it by accident, you can just go to Available and click the installed bundled libraries. I currently have them installed, so I don't have to. This button is grayed out. So that's change number one, and one that a lot of users have been asking for, to be given that flexibility. Now let's talk about the 3D options. So for those of you who have worked with the 3D system in EAGLE before, you're aware that it runs from a managed library. So you have to have a managed library, assign the 3D models in that library, and then the ECAD-MCAD integration can basically link those 3D models to the 2D part drawings. So it works. It's a good setup. You only have to model things once, but it's not really set up for being able to just quickly throw something together. And that's where this comes into play. Additionally, like Ed mentioned, sometimes you may have the mechanical team and they want to kind of override a couple of things that you've already done. That's available as well. So the way it works is very simple. Basically, you right click and you'll see that you have these options here. You can add a custom 3D package if one is not already assigned to the part. If one is already assigned to the part, then you're going to see this option, Add, which will behave as an override, and you'll see an option that says Edit the existing one. So you'll have complete control. You can use the models that have already come with the parts, or if your mechanical team needs to make some adjustment, they can override the 3D model that's already been assigned. So I'm going to go ahead and left click here, Add Custom 3D Package. And you'll see now that it'll open up the normal managed library setup. And here we can make basically a new model, adjust it as we see fit. We can use the package generator to create one using the wizard that we've integrated into EAGLE. You can upload a step model, or you can add a model from the repository that's built into EAGLE, which is inherited from ecad.io. Now, I don't remember the name of the specific package, so I've kind of hurt myself here. If I can look for it, I'm going to cancel it, go to inspector.
It also makes available if you have been uploading any step files or if you have done other mappings, those assets will also be, if they're 3D models, they will be available as well.
Mm-hmm. So this is a SOP 24. So I'll go to add a model. I have my models and I can check all models. Let's look for SOP 24. See if anything shows up. SO24, this will work. Might be a little wide, but let's try. Yeah, super wide. Yeah, way too big. Okay, let's try C24. Or just 24 pins in general. Let's try this one. Oh, still too big. We get the idea though. There we go. Boom. Now it's probably a little bit off center, so I'm probably gonna have to move it. No, and it's actually perfectly in center. So I'll go with this one. Then I just say okay. You can put a description, assigned model. Always write something. Leave a paper trail of when changes are made, things like that, because if something goes wrong, it'll be real easy to track down where it went wrong if you have these descriptions that you've been tacking on every time you made a change. And there we go. 3D package successfully assigned. Now, one thing that makes this really, really nice is that it can serve as a gentler introduction to managed libraries. You can still get 3D work done without having to go through the managed libraries. So if you just need to get something quick, or you're new to EAGLE and you don't want to immediately, or you feel intimidated by immediately going into managed libraries, this is a good way to kind of get used to the workflow, so that when you do get into managed libraries, it'll be a lot easier and the learning curve won't be as steep. So the other feature we wanted to show, which is really nice, is the ability to copy assets from a design straight into your library. So the way this works, and the key point, is you need to have a library open for things to be copied to. That's the key point here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the EAGLE control panel, File, New, Library. Okay, I have an empty library here. Again, you could just open the library that you want to copy into, but that's the key point that you need to remember when you're going to do this. There has to be a library open for assets to go into. So let's say I want to copy this one. I right-click, and you'll see I have the option to copy just the footprint, or I can copy the entire device. You also notice that because I had put in a 3D model, I now have the option to remove said custom 3D model or edit it.
Hey, Jorge, could I just pause real quick here?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give them a brief explanation of the difference between a footprint and a device. Okay. So the when you select copy footprint, it's only gonna copy the physical aspects of the asset you selected to the library. So it's gonna be the footprint itself by itself that's gonna be copied. A device includes the schematic symbol, includes the footprint, and the association between both of them. I just wanted to bring that up real quick.
Mm-hmm. So as you can see here, for this one, I'll just copy the footprint. And when we go to the library, you'll see it's there. So it makes it really easy to reuse things. Again, here we have the inspector, so we can do the whole tab thing again. It is available in the library editor as well. And now we'll just copy a device. So you can see that when you copy the device, as Ed was mentioning, you get everything that's associated with that device. You get its symbol, which is a schematic representation. You get its footprint, which is a layout representation, and any actual footprints that it'll support, and then the association between the two. So let's take this one right here, copy device. If we go to the library, you'll see that it's there. So this is useful if you're just trying to get a one or two parts from a design. If you need to extract all the libraries wholesale, then it's just go File, Export, Libraries, and that'll give you everything. Okay, so those are the changes that have come to manage libraries. So now the last set of features we want to talk about is the routing engine. Now a lot has changed here, so we'll be talking about it for a while. But let's go ahead and before we do that, make sure that everyone can use the shortcuts that have been set up for the route command. So we're going to go to the Eagle control panel. You're going to go to scripts. You have a local copy of your eagle.scr and you have kind of an example eagle.scr. What you want to do is you want to first look at default assign.scr. This is the one that has all of the different shortcuts that have been set up for the routing command. And you'll see that quite a few have been set up. So we have, as you can see here, we have Alt plus G to set the different obstacle mode. So you'll have the basically full manual. Here's push, here's walk around. You'll have the different via patterns that can be set up when doing multiple Airwire routing.
In the beginning, it will not be easy to remember all these,
Mm-hmm.
but once you get used to it, you'll notice that you'll be able to design that much faster if starting to use your keystrokes instead of having to click every time.
Now here we have the shortcuts for also while multiple Airwire routing to adjust the spacing. So you have the S, which the A, which increases it. Sorry, A decreases. S, which increases it.
And D takes it to its minimum.
I remember I was seeing a comment that somebody said that somebody in our company is a gamer because those are common gaming shortcuts.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using a quirky keyboard style, I mean, it works out perfect.
Yeah. So then here, this last one, this one's really important to remember. Basically, before we used to use the right key to swap ends. Now it's a shortcut. So it's A plus Q to swap ends. Ed, you're muted.
So what that means is, what swap end means is if you're manually routing and now you want to swap to the other end of the signal, you hit Alt K, Alt Q, and now it will begin routing from the other end. That's what that means. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So here's where all the default shortcuts are set up. Now, one thing to be aware of, okay, if you find that your shortcuts are not enabled, what you want to do is you want to go to scripts, eagle.scr, and near the top, you may find that this line right here, this one right here, has a hashtag in front of it. It's not a hashtag. It's a, what's that called? The umlaut? No, I mean, it is, but this particular symbol, the number sign, has a name. And I think
Isn't that pound?
I think that's what a lot of people call it.
Hashtag,
But hashtag, pound.
number sign.
I think it's called an umlaut or something like that, but I don't remember. So
I'm
basically,
sure one of our users will tell us in a minute.
yeah. So just basically make sure that you take it out. So that way you uncomment this line and the shortcuts get enabled by default. Okay. There was a time where by default Eagle shipped with the shortcuts disabled. We've changed that, but if you had an existing eagle.scr file, it didn't update. So you'll want to go here, just uncheck, just remove the pound sign, and you'll be able to enable the default shortcuts. So that's important. Definitely wanted to go over that because we have seen some users that run into a situation where they're trying different shortcuts and they don't work, and that's why.
And if you don't want them, just remark it.
Yeah, just put it back in the. Yeah, and again, you can modify the default shortcuts however you want. If you actually want to have your own set, what you can do is just copy default assign into the scripts, and I think you can actually right-click, copy, and then paste it into the scripts here. Okay, or drag it. I think you can drag it as well. I haven't tried that in a while, but that'll work. Okay, so with that done, let's go ahead and go through the various modes. Now, if you notice, the route icon now has a little arrow. You can try to left click it to get all the options. What I find is easier is just right click, and that'll bring up the options. That way you don't have to try to grab this thin little sliver here. Just right click on it to be able to select the option, or you can use the shortcuts. So in this case, for example, I can do Control 2, and I'll be in multiple. Airwire. Control 3 gives me diff pair. 4 starts with the quick route tools. 5 is a quick route. 6 is a quick route. 7 is a quick route. And then 1 takes us back to normal Airwire mode. Okay? So Control 1 through 7, basically. So we're going to start here with the single Airwire routing mode because there have been some changes here that we need to discuss. So I'm just going to pick one of these random Airwires. I'm going to start routing it. The first thing you're going to notice is that the first part of the trace, whatever is the active route, is kind of in an outline mode. Once I left click and finish that segment, then you'll see it makes it really easy to see the difference between what's an active route and what's already kind of been set in stone. If you don't like the outline or you want to have a different type of fill, what you can do is you can go to Options, Set, and you'll see that you have these options here and you can change them. If you just want it to be the old way where the entire route would just highlight, you can just uncheck this and that'll basically work as previous. If you want to use a fill style other than outline mode because you feel outline mode is just kind of hard to see, you can click here and you can change it to something maybe more visually interesting. You know, we can do something like this. Let's go crazy. You know, and you'll see that you'll get this type of gridded fill. So I'll go ahead and escape that. Let me put it back the way it was because I do like it in outline mode. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and rip up this one. Oh, so my selection filter, yeah. Reset. I can do it. So keep that in mind. If you ever see that something is you're clicking on it and it won't pick it, make sure your selection filter includes that object. Otherwise, it won't work. And again, it's really easy to reset it. There's a reset button at the bottom. So we'll go again over here. We'll route. Now, another thing that we want to kind of bring attention to over here that's very interesting is that you're going to notice that if you have a bend, let's say here, if you right click, you'll get the complementary bend. You see? So we're staying in the same bend style, but you're getting the complementary bend. Used to be a little bit different in previous versions of the 9 series, but in earlier versions of Eagle, this was how it worked. So we've kind of returned to that right click to get the complementary bend style. If you want to switch to a different bend style, you're going to hold Control and right click. You'll also observe that we've added this new kind of curved bend style. It's really nice. It makes for very clean traces. The one thing to note about it is that it's currently not supported by the various modes. So whenever you use this bend style, you're basically full manual. That's why I can run over anything, you know, even though I have push obstacles active. So keep that in mind. Now, one other thing that's really interesting is that, and something that users may be in the AutoCAD world, so this is kind of a little bit of a nod to AutoCAD and that type of 2D drawing world, is the idea of being able to maintain your direction. Okay, so right now, you'll notice that it's adapting and it's changing. But what if I wanted to stay going at a 45? Well, I would have to be very precise in my mouse movements to do it. But if I hold Control, you'll notice that it snaps to that direction. Okay, and I can actually deviate quite a bit from it, and it's going to stay. It'll actually stay until it can snap to a vertical. So here, this is a nice snap to, multiples of 45 degrees if you think about it. So it's very easy to keep the line going. Even though my mouse is deviating quite a bit, it's not right on it, but it helps me keep the line. So this is something that can be very useful. Once I let go, then it returns to normal. So if you want to maintain the direction you're routing in, just hold Control, and it becomes like an ortho snap. If you're familiar with AutoCAD, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about there. Once you let go of Control, then it just becomes normal routing. So really nice, very helpful feature for being able to have complete control of your routing scenario. Now, one thing that's good, and I'm going to introduce it now because it's important for the differential pair and the multiple bus routing. Once you feel that you're basically straight on to where you need to finish, if you hit Enter, Eagle will finish the route for you, assuming there's nothing in its way, or a DRC violation or something like that. You'll see, there it went, and it finished. And it's actually, it does a really good job of making a natural finish. If you have a straight path, it'll go all the way through. So it does work well. This functionality of hitting the Enter key to finish a route extends to the multiple Airwire routing mode as well as to the differential pair Airwire, differential pair routing modes. So we'll be dealing with those. Keep this little tip in the back of your mind as we go through, because we'll be talking about those as we go along, and we'll be leveraging this quick route functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this route because maybe I end up using using that location for the routing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to quick route. Sorry, to the multiple Airwire routing. So I'm going to do Control and 2. You'll see that it changes. Again, you can do it GUI way, just right click, run multiple Airwires. Okay. And the way routing multiple Airwires works is that it uses a line selection. Okay. And if you've used the quick route tools before, this will be pretty familiar. So I'm going to hold Control. So I'm going to left click, and you'll see that a line is formed. Everything that the line touches becomes part of the selection. Okay, and I can make multiple. It's not that crazy. Once I have all the things selected that I want to route, you'll see at the bottom it says right click. You'll see it's going to start routing, or it wants to start routing. But right now, there isn't really enough room. Okay, so going back to the shortcuts that we were talking about, if I hold Alt and I start pressing A, I can decrease it until hopefully it will allow me to route. There we go. See how they came out? Because now the spacing between them is small enough that they can route. And I can actually shrink it. So if I keep pressing A, you'll see that it's shrinking. Okay, now by how much is it shrinking? It's shrinking by grid unit, okay, by the number of grid units. So if I want to increase it, I can go Alt-S. So Alt-A decreases, Alt-S increases, and it's going to do it by factors of your grid unit. So if you have your grid unit well set up, you can make it really easy to control what the separation between the various routes is. So again, you notice these are all active. So I'm going to left click, and then from here we will continue. Now, one thing that's cool to note here, my mouse is a little bit jumpy on the pan. Okay, so one thing you're going to notice here is that you'll notice they're going to keep moving as a unit. Okay, so I can hit a space bar and that'll transition, or it wants to transition to an inner layer. As you can see here, it's trying to reach to move up. If I left click, now there really isn't much room for them to go anywhere. It becomes difficult to finish the route because they're just so close to the pads here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to backspace to undo these last few segments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press spacebar here to transition. Now we're transitioning with plenty of room. And we can move forward. And what we can do is if I hit enter, it's going to try to finish all the routes. Remember, I said that quick route applies to all of the modes. So we've broken out from the bottom. We came up to the top. If I hit enter, it's going to go ahead and try to route all of these signals as best as it can. And it was able to a certain extent. It actually, I think, had to go around. Okay, so in this case, it was able to give us a result, even if it wasn't exactly what we wanted, but it was able to give us a result, and it left behind a couple of little guys to clean up over here, but that's easy to fix. Whoops. Let me undo that because I have this mode still on. Okay, and we can see how that works. Now, let's look at some of the other options that came with this. I'm going to go ahead and rip this up again. I'll just group it. Use rip up Control R, and there we go. Notice when you do that, it stops highlighting the group, but it is still in use, the group, so you don't have to worry about it. So one thing I'd want to show with this multiple wires, I'm going to route these top four. Make sure they're selected. Yes. Make sure this is active. Okay. Am I on the right layer? Oh, that's why, because I'm on top. It needs to be on bottom. There we go. The active layer does have a role in this as well. So I'll left click and I'll just do these. Right click. Okay. Now, one thing I want you to notice is when I put in the spacebar, you notice they're all at the same level. Okay, but we have multiple via patterns that we can use. So via patterns can be set up here. Okay, or we can use shortcuts. So the shortcuts for the via patterns are basically alt numbers 1 through 4. So this is number 1. This is number 2. You'll see how it kind of forms a triangle. Number 3 is like a reverse triangle. And then number 4 is like a staggered, which I like. Now notice that it is obeying, it is walking around. So it will push as well. So you have really nice control over how things are routed. You also have a lot of assistance because you'll see that it's going to try to walk around any obstacles. You don't have to, on an individual basis, go ahead and route them out. Now, there's no provision for example, routing to a certain point and then hitting a key and just continuing to route one of them. What you have to do is you route to the point, for example, let's say to here. And then what we do is we'll switch to the single Airwire mode. So again, we'll do Control 1, and then you just finish off what's left. That's the gist of it. Okay. Or like I showed before, you can just do enter and let quick route finish it. I'm going to go ahead and undo these. Now, one thing I do want to show here.
George, could you zoom in just a little bit more? That
Sure.
way we could see it a little better.
So the other thing I wanted to show here is, let me see, I covered that. Airwire. I showed how to, let me just rip these up. Make sure we're on bottom. I want to be in multiple Airwire mode. Okay. If you do an Alt D, then you'll get the minimum. That's the minimum spacing as ERC defines it. And again, we can do the staggered vias. You'll see that they'll try to wiggle their way around any obstacles. Press enter. And then just let it finish. And again, if it can, it will. And there we are. And again, followed very natural routes. So quick route is very handy and it gives very good results. So we've covered the multiple Airwire route. The last one we want to go over is the differential pair routes. So one thing that's really nice about this mode is that we're going to go ahead and switch to it, a differential pair. You'll notice that it highlights the differential pairs. So I don't know if you guys can see it, but the differential pairs are highlighted right now. Okay. They're all highlighted right there. So it makes it really easy to see where in your design those differential pairs are. And then you can just click to start. And again, you'll notice they do use the walk around. I can switch to push, try to push it. In transition. Then I can press enter and let it finish. If it can, because right now they're going to crisscross. So that wasn't going to end up too well. But that's why it gives you the complaint. Oh, I think I went to the wrong layer is actually what happened. So let me do that again. Am I on the bottom layer? No, I'm on route 2. So I'm going to route actually a little bit here. Make sure I'm on bottom. Now I know I'm on bottom right now. I hit enter. And it may not be able to, because again, it would have to do this weird walk around because they're crossing. And it's leaving me behind this little stub, but it was able to do it. Okay. And you can see that it works the same way. What's really nice about it is that fact that it highlights. So when you're in that mode, it'll highlight what's left to be routed as a differential pair. So really useful. Those are the big changes that came to version 9.4 of EAGLE. Just to recap, we have the new selection filter and object inspector. CAM processor has an automatic drill output as well as a new BOM output type. With the managed libraries, it's now really easy to disable the libraries that are included with EAGLE. And if you do that by accident, it's very easy to restore them. Copy command can now copy from a design into a library. You can copy footprints, you can copy symbols, you can copy devices. And you can now assign 3D models on a schematic or on a board without having to do so first in a managed library. The route command, we've scratched the surface. We can spend an entire webinar on the route command itself, but we covered the new single Airwire mode, some of the changes that were applied to it, the new route multi Airwire mode, and the route differential pair mode. Okay, so Ed, you wanna see if there's any questions or?
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah, I was about to jump in. So thank you, everybody. I know it's kind of a bit of a long webinar today, but it's just that's the amount of information we just needed to be able to cover all these new features. And to be honest with you, um, all the features were covered, but not all of the options that include that feature were covered, because if not, we would be here a lot longer. But we will be making some more tutorials as we go along, and we have created tutorials on our YouTube channel, so you could see all these new features. Also, there is a blog on our website in which explains in quite a but much detail of each one of these features as well. Now, if you we've already now exceeded our time, but I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to ask us any questions. We are on the YouTube channel as well as on our Zoom webinar page. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post your questions on the chat, and we'll go ahead and address those as soon as you want to. Now, next week, we will be, no, not next week, the following week, we will start our lineup of webinars one more time, in which we'll start with getting started with Eagle, the series, and move on from that point forward. Now, I do have some comments on the YouTube channel, Jorge. Somebody's actually saying that they actually really like the way they could now assign the 3D models directly from the editor.
Nice.
Now, he has kind of an interesting question. It's uh, not convoluted, but the question is, where are those 3D models actually stored? Are they directly in the board file? And that's going to be kind of a compound answer. So, Jorge, you
So
want to kind of take over that
yeah,
one?
so what ends up happening there is the 3D model is still stored to the cloud. What the design file gets is a link to that model. Okay, so you're not dealing with a managed library, but the 3D model is stored on the cloud under your account, and what's stored in the file itself in the Eagle's file format is basically a link to that asset.
So, yeah, so it is, so you see an eagle, the 3D model either being formed or being assigned, but in essence, the 3D model exists on the cloud.
Correct.
And the reason we do that is that way you could have that really nice bi-directional workflow with Fusion 360. Because once you push to Fusion 360, Fusion is actually interested in using the 3D model if it's available, and actually grabs it from the cloud and uses it in Fusion 360. So that's basically, in essence, why it's stored on the cloud. Okay. So, okay, excellent. He understood that one. Thank you, Martin. Appreciate the kind comments as well. Well, I don't have any Q&A, and I don't see anything on the chat.
Thank you to Keegan. The symbol is called an octothorpe. So thank you, Keegan, for clarifying that.
The octothorpe or
Or
pound.
pound sign.
I'll be really honest with you, Keegan. I had never heard it called that in the past.
Octothorpe.
So I think I'm going to name my next pet that or something like that. Huh? That way I remember that one. That's awesome. That's great. Our users are the best. Excellent. So I don't know anything else. Nothing else is coming up. Let me just go ahead and put our email address on our chat channel. I'll do it on YouTube as well. So if you
I
need
think
to contact us, you can do support at eagle@autodesk.com. That's where Jorge and I we actually attend to that inbox. So we got support that eagle@autodesk.com. Hey Cynthia, I'm with you on that one. Okay, so Cynthia says just call it hash. Call.
yeah, the hashtag. Yeah.
Hey Cynthia, nice to see you on the YouTube channel. Usually Cynthia participates on directly on our webinar page, but apparently she jumped on. So thank you for joining us. I greatly appreciate it. Oh, well. Okay. So Martin also is stating that this is exactly my workflow with Fusion 360. And if I'm opening a file from someone else, including to you, those are those also pointing to the cloud? No. So so what he's saying is that he's getting files. If he gets a file from someone else
Mm-hmm.
and that has 3D models assigned to it, are those on the cloud as well?
So wait. So hold up. So if he gets a design from a customer or from another user, and it has 3D models assigned using our systems, that model is on the cloud. It's still referencing the cloud.
So yeah, it's still referencing the cloud, but it appears that his question is, if I'm opening a file from someone else,
Mm-hmm.
including the 3D packages for those are also pointing to the cloud. So the answer to that question, Martin, is that it is actually pointing, it's still pointing to the cloud, but you lose
Yeah, you won't
those
be able to
3D
see them.
models. You lose those 3D models because those 3D model assignments belong to the original owner of that design. So if he shares the design with you and you try to push that design from your session of Eagle to Fusion 360, you will not get none of the 3D models
Correct. And that's
because
because of the not sharing right now that
you don't own any of those because those were on the person that shared with you. Those are on his account. Okay, so you would have to do the mapping all over again. In other words, you would have to map it out again. Now, we want to improve this workflow. That way, um, those items can, or those assets will be shared, and they are currently working on that. Okay. So
yeah.
we're hoping to be able to have that accomplished at some point. I don't have really a timeline, but they're really close to releasing that.
Yeah. It's proven to be a very difficult thing to solve. But we are close.
Yeah, and it is very nice, but right now it doesn't work. So in that case, then you could have that person provide you those models. They could download them from the website and in the form of step and provide you those models, and then you could do the mapping. Again, you would have to do the mapping as well. Okay. So yeah, so right now that's what we have, or have that person share that project with you on Fusion 360. That way you could see the 3D models. But you yourself, if you're going to be working with the Eagle file directly, you will not have those 3D models assigned yet. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and have that done. Yeah, Mark, we will really soon. Excellent. Um, oh, thank you, Keegan, for your kind comments. I greatly appreciate that. We'll try to do well, we did record the session today, and we'll try to have it on the YouTube channel as soon as possible. It's quite possible that our marketing director, Lourdes, will maybe break it up into several parts. So actually might be one, but she will identify the timelines of when each topic was covered. That way you could jump directly to the topic without having to watch the entire hour. And she actually does a very good job at that. So we'll be posting it most probably that way in the next week or so. Okay, so I don't see no more Q&A. Thanks everybody for being here. Remember that you could always go to the Eagle homepage directly from the Eagle control panel and see our future webinars that we'll be hosting really soon. On the week of the 12th of June, I will be in Rochester participating in an event in Rochester, New York. The event is in the Rochester Institute of Technology. So if anybody is in that area and would like to meet up, just let me know and we'll make an arrangement and we could get together and talk a little bit more about Eagle and do some live demonstrations as well. So I'll be there in approximately 2 weeks. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I don't see further questions. Greatly appreciate it, everybody, and have a great day. Thank you.